Okay. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Nicola, who's just joined us. As I was explaining, we did all the hard work in the morning and we do the relaxed stuff in the afternoon, so timing is everything. And welcome also to those who are with us online. For those of you online, we're in this set of notes here, and we've come to page 16. So this session is devoted to one poem. So the poem in Sirach, 42 to 43, a longish poem and a marvellous one about creation, a big resource for creation spirituality today. And it might be handy for you to have the notes to hand, the people online. And also the slides here are available online, or they may have been sent to you by email when you registered, and so you get those notes then are also available, easily enough. Then just a word to repeat a little from the morning. And the book of Sirach, which is also called Ecclesiasticus, is one of those books which is deuterocanonical, meaning it wasn't accepted at the Reformation when they reduced the canon of the Bible a little bit, and the books that were originally in Greek were then omitted. In fact, the book of Sirach was originally written in Hebrew. And for many centuries, the Hebrew was lost. And in the 19th, 20th century, they discovered about 2/3 of the Hebrew. And then, because the book itself says very clearly that it is a translation, that Sirach wrote it and his grandson, Ben Sirach, translated it into Greek. But that's what it says. And it survives in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament. It contains all these extra books. And as I was showing on the very first day, it's possible to get a translation of the Septuagint. That's the Greek Old Testament, which is on the notes for the first day of the book of Genesis. Do you remember? The second version of the book of Genesis was from the Greek, and it had that very peculiar idea that the translation might be more original than the original. It's kind of an odd idea, because the Hebrew continued to evolve, which is fine. Peculiarly, I'm awfully interested in the lectionary. And peculiarly, Sirach is never read on Sundays. Most peculiar. Now, some of you wouldn't want to be reading it. But there's also marvellous things in it. And then a bit is read in ordinary time in week 8. Not very much, from chapter 44. Then let us now praise famous men. You know, that's that passage that's read. So that's a bit of the background about Sirach. And we come here in the middle of the book, or towards the end of the book really, a big hymn of praise. So again, it's a bit like the book of wisdom that we just looked at this morning. It's kind of very exalted poetry. It's a big effort. And it begins with a poem on God's omniscience, how God knows everything. And this is followed by an explanation of the wonders of the natural order. And that's a beautiful sequence in the book of Sirach. And it ends then with praise of God as well. So sort of a sandwich of ideas, as you can see. People divide it up in different ways, but there are big stanzas, big strophes, 14 plus 15, 14, 16, 8, stuff. So in form and content, the kind of thing it is, it's very like Job 38 to 41, where God displays all of creation to Job in order to quieten him down. And the message of not good. This wouldn't be the whole thing, but part of the message of that part of Job is, if you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen, basically. But it's also like stuff in Proverbs and also wisdom. And these passages, which tend to list items belong to the style of writing called the onomasticon that I mentioned yesterday. Onoma is the Greek word for name, and an onomasticon is a list of names. And this is the kind of thing it is. And there are several of those. Job 28 is also a good example. So it's a type of literature devised as an aid to the scribes. List of places, occupations, titles, flora, fauna, etc. Kind of a nice kind of a thing, the onomasticon. And this one precedes the praise of famous men, a much longer, and it is men, whether you like it or not. The praise of the pious men. These are the Lechasidim. So that then follows in the book of Sirach, which we won't really come to. And then we can go through it little bit by little. At the very end, I'll show you the preceding 14 verses. Okay, but I want you to enjoy Sirach before you begin to dislike him. So as I was saying, a hymn to the Creator, and then the wonders of nature and back, and resembling many other things like the Egyptian stuff. So fine, it's all okay. So we'll start. That's 42, 15 to 21. So I might read that section. It's on page 16 on the notes. I will now call to mind the works of the Lord, and will declare what I have seen. By the word of the Lord his works are made, and all his creatures do his will. The sun looks down on everything with his light, and the work of the Lord is full of his glory. The Lord has not empowered even his holy ones, that means the angels, to recount all his marvellous works, which the Lord Almighty has established, so that the universe may stand firm in his glory. He searches out the abyss and the human heart. There's a little suggestion that the human heart might be more difficult to get to the bottom of. And he understands their subtleties. For the Most High knows all that may be known. He sees from of old the things that are to come, so the future. He discloses what has been and what is to be, and he reveals the traces of hidden things. And then, just in case, no thought escapes him, and not a single word is hidden from him. He has set in order the splendours of his wisdom, and he is from all eternity one and the same. Nothing can be added or taken away, and he needs no one to be his counselor. So, that's an interesting introduction to a guy who's going to talk about the wonders of creation. And he's saying that God is obviously omnipotent and omniscient, and that nobody ever could track it all. If the angels aren't allowed to do it, all the more so a human being can't really do it. Huh? So it exceeds everybody, including the poor man himself, which is perfectly in order, I would say. So that's 15 to 21. And then just to the very end, 15 to 21. And then just to the very end, down as far as 20. He mentions also the abyss, which we had in the book of Genesis. Do you remember the Tehom? The abyss and the depths of the human heart. So fine. Nothing is hidden. That includes then also then the future, as we saw in the poem itself. So it's really easy to follow. And then towards the end, the theme of not being able to recount all that God has to say is very like 2nd Isaiah. That's Isaiah 42:55. And the idea is that God actually knows everything and controls everything in spite of evidence to the contrary. So it's kind of a theodicy. And they have the idea, but they probably don't get this directly from the Persians. The Persians had the idea that it was the roving eyes of the deity. God was watching everywhere. A bit like the picture of the Sacred Heart we had as children, where the eyes followed you around the room. But the idea is that the whole of the universe is harmonious and under God's control, and the Creator is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And so that's the reality that Sirach is kind of trying to deal with. Then 22 to 26 at the end. How desirable are all his works, and how sparkling they are to see. All things live and remain forever. Each creature is preserved to meet a particular need. All things come in pairs, one opposite the other, and he has made nothing incomplete. Each supplements the virtues of the other. Who could ever tire of seeing his glory? So this is very important in the world of the wisdom stuff, that everything matches. Everything has its complement and its pair. And also important in the religious world, where everything pure and impure kind of has its place. And then he's going to begin then in the next couple of verses the whole stuff about the phenomena of nature. So that's where we go now as he goes in. So this is. He mentions. He will mention eventually, as you see there, the ocean. The unexplored abyss, where the mythological beings are. And the sun is important, but the moon is more important to Sirach, because Sirach is interested in the way the liturgical calendar works. So he's watching the moon more than the sun, actually. Yeah? So that's important for him. So we'll take a look at 41. My numbers are not quite right on the page. I must have been lazy when I was doing my numbers. My numbers are not quite right up top. Anyway, we'll work it out. So he talks about the sun. The pride of the higher realms is the clear vault of the sky, as glorious to behold as the sight of the heavens. The sun, when it appears, proclaims as it rises, what a marvellous instrument it is, the work of the Most High. So he nails that. You see that? Straight away. This is created. It's an instrument. It's a tool. Something God has made. At noon it parches the land. Who can withstand its burning heat? And then he jumps into a comparison. A man tending a furnace works in burning heat. Now this will be something of an understatement for us with our scientific background. But 3 times as hot is the sun scorching the mountains. Not just 3 times as hot, eh? When it breathes out fiery vapours, and when it shines forth its rays, it blinds the eyes. Great is the Lord who made it. As at his orders, it hurries on its course. So that's his description. And then he moves forward then to. I'll go back here and get my numbers right here. It goes back to, because my numbers are not right on top. Anyway, it'll all come right in the end. Anyway, then he comes to the moon. That's where I'm right there now. To the splendor of the moon. It is the moon that marks the changing seasons, governing the times, an everlasting sign. From the moon comes the sign for festal days, so chiefly the Sabbath, a light that wanes when it completes its course. The new moon, as its name suggests, renews itself. How marvellous it is in this change, a beacon to the hosts on high, shining to the vault of heaven. And the new moon is Hodesh, so it's Hodesh, and it renews itself, which is Hadash. When you go back into the Hebrew behind the Greek, yeah? And he goes on then to talk about the glory of the stars and the rainbow. It's a very beautiful passage here. The glory of the stars is the beauty of heaven, a glittering array in the heights of the Lord. I don't know if you ever experienced the clear sky in a country other than here. Outside Ireland is very poor, kind of polluted sky basically. But if you maybe not in the west, but if you go out like in the Middle East, you have an absolutely clear sky at night, and you see many more stars in the sky. And when you lie down under it, you feel you can put your hand up and pull one of them down. It's really quite amazing in the Middle East, huh? So, the glory of the stars is the beauty of heaven, a glittering array in the heights of the Lord. He means the stars were pictured as kind of sentinels or kind of guardians. On the orders of the Holy One, they stand in their appointed places. They never relax in their watches. So the stars are all keeping an eye on all of us. Huh? Look at the rainbow and praise him who made it. It is exceedingly beautiful in its brightness. It circles the sky with its glorious arc. And then it stays with the image of a bow. The hands of the Most High have stretched it out. Beautiful, a beautiful image about the way the rainbow works. Then the writer then is able to continue. By his command he sends the driving snow and speeds the lightnings of his judgment. Therefore the storehouses are open and clouds fly out like birds. In his majesty he gives the clouds their strength, and the hailstones are broken into pieces. The voice of his thunder causes the earth to tremble, and when he appears the mountains shake. At his will the south wind blows, and so do the storm from the north and the whirlwind. He scatters snow like birds flying down, and its descent is like locusts alighting. Of course, snow is a great sense of wonder. I know you probably also have experienced seeing snow, people who see snow for the first time. And it's quite a marvellous idea. And we saw earlier the picture of the universe, that there's this big dome over the whole thing, and there are sluice gates which have stores of snow, hail and rain, through which all these various bits then gradually appear. The eye is dazzled by the beauty of its whiteness, and the mind is amazed as it falls. Then he says, this also occurs in the Psalms, he pours frost over the earth like salt, and icicles form like pointed thorns. So terrifically, very sensitive to nature. The cold north wind blows, and ice freezes on the water. It settles on every pool of water, and the water puts it on like a breastplate. It's like a kind of a big surface of protection is what he has in mind. And so you can see there and on the screen, he compares the snow to the descent of birds and locusts, icicles to thorns, frost to ashes scattered on the ground, and a frozen pond to a warrior's breastplate. So quite imaginative. And then he returns then to the imagery. He consumes the mountains and burns up the wilderness and withers the tender grass like fire. A mist quickly heals all things. The falling dew gives refreshment from the heat. Now, very important in the Middle East, where they actually did collect the dew every night because the water is really scarce. By his plan, he stilled the deep and planted islands in it. Those who sail the sea tell of its dangers, and we marvel at what we hear. And then he continues, in it are strange and marvellous creatures, all kinds of living things and mighty sea monsters. Because of him, each of his messengers succeeds, and his word all things hold together. So the ancient Israelites were not a seafaring people. And they had a kind of sense of wonder at people who did go seafaring. And they had a sense that there was all sorts of strange stuff out there which they simply weren't familiar with. And then he begins then to draw something of a conclusion. And this is the most amazing sentence in the Bible, I think, really. We could say more, but could never say enough. Let the final word be, he is the all. That's a very remarkable sentence. I put it on the slide there. He is the all. Now this is very like what's available in the culture, which is Stoic pantheism. That God, everything that is full of God, and everything is God, really. Now our friend here, Sirach, is not a pantheist, that everything is God, but he is a panentheist, and everything is in God. He really is that, because he's very keen to show that the Creator is greater, the Creator is the origin, the Creator is independent, but that doesn't mean there isn't a presence of God in all that is. And he falls in with Greek philosophy and Middle Eastern speculation about wisdom, that there's a single divine principle holding the universe together. But God is not kind of swallowed up by that. And the hymn uses Jewish and Stoic ideas of creation and the ordering of all things. It's very in touch with the local culture at the time. Nicholas, sorry about all this. As in the deep end here, we spent the morning looking at the figure of wisdom in the Bible. In the previous set of notes, we looked over 6 different books of the Bible to show that they believed that the wisdom was the order to be found in creation, and that order, if you can access it, through meditation and science, gives you access to what God is like. And so that's what's coming out here as well, only more powerfully from our translation point of view. Sirach is 2nd century BC. About 180 BC. And then later translated. And I put in there a little bit of the Latin. See where the Vulgate doesn't like he is the all, and the Vulgate translates it he is in all, which is a little bit cowardly because Sirach is very brave. But the Vulgate is ipse est in omnibus, he is in the all. Whereas the Greek doesn't say that. The Greek simply says he is the all. Very, very strong kind of teaching from the book of wisdom. Eh? So just to stop a moment on Stoic philosophy, which was one of the current great philosophies of the period and very important for understanding this kind of a book and also understanding St. Paul and St. John's Gospel. Because the Stoics believed that there was a divine rationality, which they called the logos, which is the word for word. In the beginning was the word, in John's, we'll see it tomorrow. So that the Stoic philosophy was part of the world view, and it was genuinely popular philosophy. It was like mindfulness today, where people access a lot of stuff that if they don't do formal philosophy, but they kind of know about it. And they believed that this rationality from God permeated the cosmos and holds it together. And in the ancient world, mythological creatures representing chaos were thought to have threatened the divine order. And according to verse 23, the Creator brought the creatures, here called Rahab, under control. That's regular in the Bible. And the God of such power and exquisite artistry justly deserves Ben Sirach's adjective, awesome. Probably overdone in our time. Exceedingly terrifying and wonderful and wondrous and exceedingly dreadful. So he's a marvelous sense of awe before the very, very strong sense further down in the verses. So I'll go back over and read the rest of the poem here with you. So we could say more, but could never say enough. Let the final word be, he is the all. Where can we find strength to praise him? For he is greater than all his works. Awesome is the Lord, and very great, and marvellous in his power. Glorify the Lord and exalt him as much as you can, for he surpasses even that. When you exalt him, summon all your strength, and do not grow weary, for you cannot praise him enough. Who has seen him and can describe him? Or who can extol him as he is? Many things greater than these lie hidden, for I have seen but a few of his works. For the Lord has made all things, and to the godly he has given wisdom. So that's a wonderful end there, where he goes back to where he started on the whole business of how can I praise what this God is like, and he realizes he never can. Now he's very much in favour of temple worship. So he does want praise and worship to go on, and he's really quite conservative, sort of a character, really. But here he has stretched himself a little bit and gone very brave in the overall story of creation. And I think what you find between, and they're all late books, between the book of wisdom, where we're told that the mind of God is present in all that is. We saw with the 5 metaphors that he used. And here in the book of Sirach, where he's able to say he is the all, then they've really gone as far as they can go in religious imagination. Because they're doing what I was saying to you earlier. They're trying to hold the idea of God within and God beyond. And Sirach is able to hold the God within very strongly because he's so clear that there's a creator behind all that is. And then because he's so free about that, he can permit himself then to say extraordinary things such as he is the all, which is an extraordinary sentence when you think about it. So, perhaps this is the first time you've gone through all of that. It might be. So here's a question then for us to discuss here. What's your overall impression about the poem, having just heard it now, maybe? Are there parts that you really liked? And is a bit of it useful for today? We'll just take a minute and take a glance back over it, and people at home can glance back over it. I don't think we can do interactive stuff with people at home, can we? They can't talk back to me, can they? No, okay. Sorry, you can't talk back to me. It's quite beautiful, isn't it? Yeah. And long. It's a shame it isn't used in the liturgy more. Yes, yeah. And that's correct. I mean, all the wisdom writers are reflecting on where does all this stuff come from and how do we make sense of it and how do we connect. Now, Sirach is kind of old-fashioned. So although at this time people were beginning to believe in life after death, they were. Sirach himself doesn't really believe in life after death. You know, because in the Old Testament, for most of the period of the Old Testament, people did not believe in life after death. They believed that God blessed you in this life, and more or less when you were dead, they didn't put it like this, but you were compost, you know. But towards the end of the Old Testament period, what we call the Old Testament period, gradually there began to emerge a conviction about life after death. And it comes out very clearly in the Book of Wisdom. You know, early on in the Book of Wisdom, often read at funerals, the souls of the righteous are in the hands of God, no torment will ever touch them. But Sirach is not there. Sirach is, slightly old-fashioned still. Any other reactions or comments on the poem, as I say?
29 and 30 are nice.
Pardon?
29 and 30, lines 29 and 30. Awesome is the Lord, and His are very great.
Oh, yes, yeah. Yeah, he's very much in awe of the gift of the gift of creation. Very much.
Is there an overall theme in this book too? Like we have this, and then you said there's other pieces that we wouldn't be impressed. So is there an overall theme?
I should say there's an overall theme in the Book of Sirach. He is interested that people should get in touch with the inner wisdom that's in the world in order to order their lives in accordance with that and then lead happy and prosperous lives. That's a fundamental idea. Although the Book of Job has been written by this time, he doesn't engage with the great problem of the Book of Job. How is it that innocent people suffer so much? So he kind of ignores it, and he kind of goes down the route that if suffering comes your way, you did something wrong, He's kind of old-fashioned in that sense, and he's quite old-fashioned when it comes to women. The other great theme in the book of Sirach is temple worship, and he gives an account of how the high priest dressed, with a very detailed account with matching accessories. And he's interested in how the temple worship would function. So those are the kind of interests. I'll show you a passage just before this passage here. I can show it to you on the scoops. What did I do there? You get back there, you. I'll show you a passage. Excuse me. Oh, go away, you. Can't see properly. Here it is. This is Sirach. Let's give you, I can't spell that right now. This is Sirach 42. Give you an idea of how misogynist he can be, yeah? I just make that a little bit bigger so we can see it properly. Can you see that all right? So, you're meant to feel sorry for the guy, okay? It's just, it's just before our this is just before our passage here. A daughter is a secret anxiety to her father, and worry over her robs him of sleep. When she is young, for fear that she may not marry, or if married, for fear she may be disliked. While a virgin, for fear she may be seduced and become pregnant in her father's house, or having a husband, for fear she may go astray, or, though married, for fear she may be barren. Keep strict watch over a headstrong daughter, or she may make you a laughingstock to your enemies, a byword in the city or the assembly of the people, and put you to shame in public gatherings. See that there is no lattice in her room, no spot that overlooks the approaches to the house. It's very detailed, isn't it? Do not let her parade her beauty before any man, or spend her time among married women. Be bad for her. For from garments comes the moth. This is terrible stuff. But from a woman comes woman's wickedness. Better is the wickedness of a man than the woman who does good. I mean, that's an impossible sentence. It's the woman who brings shame and disgrace. Sorry. I'll take one of my little sweets. Yeah, he's the most frank and the most misogynist, really. But, I mean, that's a terrible sentence. Better the weakness of a man than a woman who does good. I mean, yeah. She gets the blame, yeah. The woman caught committing adultery on her own, was called that story. But that's kind of scary stuff, because that went into the tradition and became part of it. Sorry for all the coughing. But that's terrible to carry on, really and truly. But then against that, then he has several lovely hymns to do with the story of creation that are very uplifting, and you say I'm on board for that. And so what we do with those texts is we take the ones that are useful, and we tiptoe away from the ones that are so not only not useful but harmful, positively harmful.
And for sure you wrote the whole book.
I think it's a compilation of the grandson, so maybe, yeah. Any other remarks about the poem itself? To go back to that, not to distract you now with his misogyny. That is a distraction.
Awesome, that word is very much in vogue at the moment, but awesome is the
Yes, yeah.
very great and marvelous is the power. So this is something that's awesome, the word. Oh.
Yes, yeah. It's quite a beautiful word that you don't. You see, the trick. If God becomes sort of God in our back pocket, then God is so familiar that something of the beyondness of God is gone, and then we're worshipping an idol, something we have created. And so we want to keep a balance of, I'm loved, cherished, near, and there's something way beyond me all the time. And you have to hold the two things together. It came out.
For me, the introduction to the Our Father is a bit of a challenge, because, for me, dare was the young fellow, I dare you do that.
Yeah.
And we were daring one another to do that.
Yeah.
For me, I prefer the word of the courage.
Yes. In Latin it's audemus dicere, as you know, which means we have the courage to say.
And the courage, the Irish is
Yeah.
is good as well.
What does the Irish say? Oh, simple as that. Okay. It's more simple.
I think so, yeah.
But you do
Sorry, the last bit, courage.
that the well,
It's just about the Our Father. That's the introduction. I don't like the dare.
yeah,
Oh, I wouldn't dare God, you know. In
Yeah.
terms of the word dare,
Yeah,
for me, it's something, you know, I dare you.
yeah. But yeah, it doesn't work in our English. Yeah.
Whereas in the Latin, as you say, it's just
Audemus dicere.
Don't
Yeah.
think it arises in those Greenwich, when they're standing up, or Stoney Hall doing the end.
Yeah, well, that's completely left out. Yeah, it's completely left out there. But I do think, you know, in any kind of spirituality, you want to balance the two things, you know. And I'm often struck by, there was a guy who wrote in the 1920s, I'm sure you've come across him, Rudolf Otto. Have you come across him? He wrote a book which became a classic called The Idea of the Holy. It's kind of a book that, you know, people interested in spirituality and religion should all read, really, because it became a standard reference work. And he came up with a marvellous expression. He talked about God as the mysterium tremendum et fascinans, the two expressions. The mysterium, mean the mystery, of course, and tremendum means it gives you a rattle. You know, it disturbs you. And fascinans, you're drawn kind of involuntarily. So that's I think it's a wonderful expression. So the mysterium, I can write it up here if you like. You can see it in Latin. Maybe I can see well enough. I can type it. Oi, what am I doing? This is how it comes up. Look, this is Rudolf Otto. The Idea of the Holy. Rudolf Otto, yeah, German, and the expression was the mysterium tremendum, often I use it a fair bit, et fascinans. There we are. That's okay, is it? Oh, it's gone again. I can't see. Go back down there, you. There we are. And each word is important, because the Greek word mysterion, the Greek word, there's a Greek word really, comes from a very old Greek verb, muo, which means to stop. And here it means to put your hand over your mouth, or to be silent. So the mysterium is beyond words. And then the tremendum is pure Latin. That's it gives you, it disturbs you profoundly. So a sense of dread or awe would be appropriate in there. And fascinans. And if you had either one on its own, it would be dangerous. If the encounter with God were simply tremendum, if it was simply disturbing, then it would eventually be destructive for a person. And if it was simply fascinans, that's to say I'm cozy, I'm comfortable, I'm drawn, it's fine, then it would be kind of idolatry. You'd be worshipping a cozy God that you've created. And so you have to keep the two sides kind of together if you can. And one of the benefits of reading, say, the wisdom books is exactly that. They do exactly that. They have the sense of delight before God. They've also the sense that this world is immense and the Creator is greater, and yet the Creator has come close to us in all that is. And that's a fabulous combination, a very wholesome combination.
You can just get back the dark night of the soul, and as opposed to the enlightenment or the light.
Yes, it would be a sense of where you're being also, then the eventual journey of the tremendum would be a path of purification. Where you'd have to let go of your project for the relationship and allow yourself to be drawn by God. So you'd be disturbed enough for that to happen would be the key, I think, if that's what you mean.
But isn't that where the wisdom works really, in the darkness?
Yes, exactly. But you want also the fascinans, that's to say, I'm attracted, I'm fulfilled, it's joyful, and it's life-giving. And you want the two sides all the time. Huh? Anybody else on the poem in Sirach?
Yeah, on line 28, verse 28.
Yeah.
Where can we find the strength to praise him? Is that praising God?
Pardon?
Where can we find the strength to praise him? Is the hymn, is that God?
Yes. Yes, it is, yeah. He's working well within a patriarchal system, where God is male. Well within. We had...
It's more experiential.
Yes, it is. Yeah. He's drawn by what he sees in nature around him very beautifully. I mean, I think the the list of stuff that he draws on, the sun, the moon, the stars, the rainbow, the snow. He's really fascinated by snow and ice and mist. He's drawn by all this phenomena of nature. He doesn't go on to do other things, which he could do. Plants and animals could also fit in there as well. But he's looking at the kind of celestial events, the stuff that comes down out of the sky. But as you say, it's drawn directly from experience. He's responding to God within nature. Yes, and and he's brought to a moment of joy. It's a joyful hymn, and he's not disturbed he's not disturbed by the fact that he can't praise God adequately. That doesn't disturb him, because that's the nature of the beast. It's the nature of the beast. It's okay. So in that sense, it's I find it as an awful pity that it's not in the liturgy, because especially now for today. If I were arranging a liturgy on ecology, that's your text, basically. I mean, you can match that if you want to with Genesis 1, very easily, and also what we saw earlier, Psalm 104, very, very easily. And he's the great source, and it's actually not, even though he's a bit of a nationalist, really. This isn't at all nationalistic. This is we're detached now from the narrow nationalism of just Israelite religion. We're looking at a much bigger affair, and he's in tune also with Greek philosophy of the period, like the Book of Wisdom. Kind of interesting. How you put it.
Marveled at the explorers, those who sailed in the sea. And that was dangerous, and I marvel at that this here.
Yeah. That's the curiosity of the landlubber, that the ancient Israelites weren't seafaring, and they loved stories of how people who travelled. They didn't travel by sea very much themselves at all, really.
They weren't to grow on your way.
Pardon?
They weren't to grow on your way.
They weren't to grow on your way. No, they weren't. Well, they got. They often had experience of exile, of course, but not experience of travelling by sea, really. Yeah. Good. Pardon? Oh, yeah? Oh, yes, yeah. I see it, yeah. Yeah, actually, not unlike. For I've seen but a few of his works. Yeah, John's Gospel ends, of course, famously with all the books in the world couldn't hold all the stories that would have to be told. I think it's great that you can find such direct nature poems in the Bible, because often we look outside the Bible for stuff like this, and there is beautiful stuff outside the Bible, and welcome. But it's also good to find it rooted in core tradition, which we find here in the book of Sirach. Sorry for all the coughing. It actually isn't harmful. I don't feel uncomfortable. It's just there, in my way, as I say.
Somewhere along the way, human beings lost the appreciation of nature, to care for it. That's what Francis is trying to
Yeah,
put us
yeah, yeah.
back. But we just thought it was there for our benefit. That authors talk about dominion over.
Yes, yeah, yeah. And that, of course, is a very unfortunate word in the Hebrew Bible. We're meant to subdue it, you know, which is kind of wrong, basically. Yeah, yeah. But the earlier idea of Stuart, we
Cabinet, you know, has the lovely one, the one, green, blue, yellow, and red. God is down in the bogs and the swamps and marshes, sensational as April, and almost incredible, the flowering of our catharsis. And so on.
telling you, that's lovely. That's really nice. Yeah, yeah. So some stuff from Kavanagh to take us back into that. Yeah, that's a good one to do. Yeah.
Seamus Heaney also, our Irish poets.
Well, they can be very good, very close to nature, very close. Good. Shall we leave it at that? We've Alexio. Now it's scheduled for 4:30, but I suppose we can bring it forward to 4:00. Can we? Would that suit? Shall we use this text? Or which one would you like to use? We've a whole range from today because this morning was an awful lot of text altogether.
But Marvins of Nature is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. We can use that one at 4:00 for our Lectio Divina time. Okay. Thanks very much to everybody online. Thanks for joining us. Hope you haven't been too disturbed by all this coughing and spluttering. My apologies. It's a leftover of COVID, I'm afraid. And say it's not painful. It's just there. It'll go away. So we'll see you at 4:00. Then we can resume. Then. Okay. Thanks.